You want to leave things open for the reader to fill in with their own imaginations. Hi everyone, welcome back. I hope you're doing well. Today we are going to talk about just a few pieces of advice on how to write a good ending for your story. Now there is a lot we could say about the endings of stories, but I want to give you a few things to think about that will help guide you as you write the rest of your story. You want to be thinking about the ending of your story at the beginning because you're going to build to it. I know a lot of people who are my right by the seat of your pants people don't like to do that. I recommend some kind of planning on that, some kind of outlining, however sporting, because I think it makes a more cohesive story. So this is for people who want some semblance at minimum of planning out your endings. First thing I would say, make sure that your ending is grounded in all of the preceding events. The preceding events in your story build to the end. This might sound obvious, but it's actually something a lot of people struggle with because they're writing event to event, just thinking about what seems like the next interesting thing to write, rather than thinking about what is the most important thing to write that is germane to the story. For character-driven stories, this is the character arc. That's what it should be grounded in. So when I say make sure that the ending is grounded in the preceding events, we're not just thinking about, okay, make sure the surface level action is grounded in the preceding events of all the other surface action. It's also making sure that the internal character development that we arrive at is grounded in all of the underlying developmental changes that have happened throughout. If you take character arc mastery, which I cannot advise enough, but if you take that, we'll go through that. You'll learn about how there are two kinds of stories and that this character driven arc is the one that is actually influencing all of the events on the surface of the story. Which means that if you want the ending grounded in the preceding events, you're actually looking first and foremost at your character's development and then how those surface events attach to it. So you want to look at both of those things. Your ending should be rooted in that, because if it's not, and you're just kind of choosing interesting events as you go without strategy, the reader gets to the end, and even if it was kind of an interesting plot, they don't feel tremendously fulfilled by it because it doesn't feel cohesively like they were building to this moment. So you want to make sure that you watch that. Sorry if I look down. If you've watched my videos before, you know I teach from notes. So there you have it. My second piece of advice is leave things to the reader's imagination. Don't feel like you have to tell them everything. I talk about this in a lot of my videos. You want to leave things open for the reader to fill in with their own imaginations. It's the difference between giving people a line sketch and a photograph. And that's true of your endings as well. It depends on the story you're writing. If you're writing a serial, you're definitely going to want to leave open threads. So if you're writing a series in which the next book continues from the first, right? So you can have some series in which a book reaches its finality, but then we're just going to see those characters return in another book. That one, I still like leaving little bits of things open, but you can have more finality. But if you're writing something like the Ring trilogy of Tolkien or whatnot, you are going to leave a lot of different things hanging. And so there are numerous ways you can do that, but you want to think very strategically. What are those? Where do I want each of those threads to stop for the moment? And there should be a rhyme and a reason to that, so that you're kind of have everybody hanging at an interesting place, so that the reader goes, oh my gosh, what's going to happen here, 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 and here. There's a bit more to it than just saying, all right, I'm just going to stop it here and then we'll move on. You want to think strategically about that. If you're writing a non-serial story, it's still nice to leave a little bit of breath. Leave something for the reader to go, oh, I wonder what's going to happen. You know, the characters aren't stopping. They're walking off into the next thing for them, but they're not stopping. And so you want to leave a bit of openness there. If you kind of tell them everything, it's like, okay, wow, we're really done. And you don't see a lot of books doing that. So try to keep some openness to the ending as well. Make sure, of course, that you resolve all of your plot threads you need to keep track of your plot threads. Usually you will have numerous ones, especially if you've designed it well. And when I work with students and we go through plot things, particularly if through the plot framework, which I haven't released yet, but will be coming in a few months, I hope. But you want to track all of your threads, and plot threads should move together. Sometimes they come together, sometimes they go apart, sometimes those two threads never quite meet, but you want all of this. I'm so sorry, I have something in my eye and I'm just gonna have to get it out. Okay, there you go. You have all these threads that sometimes they meet, sometimes they diverge, but all of them need to come to resolution. Sometimes those threads will come to resolution together, sometimes those threads will come to resolution separately. It is important to keep track of them, especially if you have a lot of characters in your story. So make sure that you understand all of the plot threads you've started and that they all have resolution. Now again, that resolution can be mildly open, but we need some kind of resolution with it. Next, you want to demonstrate distinct changes. Distinct changes are going to show finality. Now, I say this with a bit of a caveat because this really does depend on the story. Some stories are very literary and the changes are very subtle. So I get into this in character arc mastery. A lot of times the writing advice that you will see and hear online is that there has to be big, enormous change. It's not actually true. You can have a lot of characters. You see this particularly in literary books where the characters go through very subtle changes. And that's just fine. That can be just as dramatic. It's just different. So, the amount of change that you have, it doesn't mean that one is more dramatic. It means that the drama is different. You can have a not very dramatic story in which a character goes through a lot of change. And you can have an extraordinarily dramatic story in which a character goes through relatively little change. So it's about the quality of the way you articulate that change, which again, I get into character arc mastery. But you want to demonstrate that the change has taken place. It can create a sense of finality when you do so. When you demonstrate how the character is, or the situation is no longer where they were at the beginning, we are now at the end, that can really just kind of make the reader or the viewer just kind of go, okay, we are done. A great example of this is Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings stories. There are really distinct changes of place. They leave the Shire. We've moved on. They go here. They go into Mordor. They go all over. And those changes of geography create senses of finality behind Frodo as he's moving forward. He's left the Shire. There's a finality to that moment in the story. He's gone here. There's a finality. But at the end of that story, when they've returned, and they're reflecting, they end up leaving the Shire, but there's this sense that when they get back to the Shire, it's different now. And that everything that they've gone through, somehow the Shire doesn't work anymore for them. It's this place they always wanted to get back to. They never wanted to leave. And now it's not their home anymore because of everything they've been through. And it's very lovely the way that Tolkien articulates that. But that gives his stories such a sense of finality. We've gone through all of this hoping to get back to the Shire, only to come back and find that the thing we were hoping to return to isn't our place anymore. And there's a sense of closure there, but there's a sense of openness because they go on. They leave the Shire and they go on. And you don't really know what becomes of them after that necessarily in much detail. But there's closure there. So think about that. Think about the who, think about the what, your who, what, when, where, why, how. Think of those and think about how am I going to demonstrate the sense of change that has taken place. All right, another piece of advice, this seems obvious, learn from the books and films you love. I cannot speak enough for active reading and reading like a writer, reading like a filmmaker, going through and getting very meta on yourself. And when you see or you watch something that you say, I love that, why do I love it? How did they write this? What is it that makes me love this so much? If you will actively read that way and view films that way, why do I love this? What did they do? And take the time to really go through it. You will learn so much, and it will help you then use those techniques in your own work. And last, just a few things that I think you should avoid. Please, I recommend avoiding cliches. Please, no cliches. Avoid all those storytelling cliches that you often hear. Miraculous rescues. Well, sometimes they're nice, but a lot of times someone just kind of swooping in and saving the day at the end, it's a killer. You know, the readers put in all this energy, and for you to just be like, oh, and then someone came to save the day. You just took away all this investment of my emotion and my time that I put in. So I don't recommend that. Highly don't recommend the whole "it was all a dream" thing. Oh, she woke up and it was all a dream. We want to know what happened. We want to know they really went through it. If we find that everything we went through was just one big dream, we feel like what a waste. It's not exciting for the reader. So 3 things that I recommend avoiding. It's just a few pieces of advice I have on good endings. Like I said, there is so much more we could say about them. But these things I think are good and helpful and will help you set yourself on your way. I hope it was helpful. If it was, please do give it a thumbs up. Like the channel, subscribe. There's a bell you can click. Sign up for the newsletter. I have a newsletter on my website, and sometimes I offer free trainings. And if you want to find out about those, you need to be on the newsletter. So sign up, because I'd love to have you there. And I thank you for watching. I thank you for being a part of this community. I hope you're having a beautiful day, and I wish you well with your writing. Bye.